Don't go there. Cut.
Don't go there. All right, we're here with Lori Frederick again, our good friend Lori, and we always love getting updates from you and what's going on in your world. But we were talking offline earlier, and there's a topic. It's a very broad topic, but you're going to really help us safety pros kind of get our head right a little, wrap our heads around this topic. And that is, there are so many options for us, right? As far as injury prevent, some are called injury prevention specialists. Some are called sports medicine people. There's physical therapists. There's massage therapy. There's doctors. There's like what? There's so many options. And so like, what do all of those different things mean? And where do you see this whole industry in the US anyway headed? Good, bad, or indifferent, where do you see it? And as a movement coach yourself, as the movement ninja, help us figure out all these options and what they mean.
Right. What does the title really mean? And are you supposed to fit in a certain bucket if you have a certain title,
Right.
or, specialty? And it's kind of a yes and a no, but I like to think of it kind of as, a good salad bar or a buffet of all the things you can choose. If you really want to just stick with one thing, or you can use more. So going off of our offline conversation, just in this world of injury prevention and really trying to stay ahead of injuries, not post-injury, but pre-injury wellness world, does it really matter what your title letters are, whether you're getting a work relationship with a physician or a physical therapist, athletic trainer, massage therapist, blah, blah, blah. There are other companies that and early intervention companies that do go very specific. They only use athletic trainers. They only use physical therapists, or they only use massage therapists. For Balanced Biomechanics, we like the whole salad bar approach because I really believe that you put all of those brains together. Everyone comes at the body from a different angle and they view it differently. So everyone has this really cool new perspective to offer the worker and, the company as a whole. So it's really fun when, I might meet with someone and say, that one's got me a little stuck. So I go over to my PT colleagues that we have, and they have a different perspective on it, and vice versa. It goes all the way around. So fill your plate with all the things, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's great. And that's what we want. We want your opinion. And because I know I trust your opinion. So to be clear for anybody watching or listening, this is not a commercial for Lori, but Lori's work in this space is why we're talking to her. And so I know I value her opinion, and there's no affiliation, right? We just got to know each other over the years in this space. But pay attention to what Lori is saying here, because this, as a safety professional, this gives me something else to think about or consider when I'm looking for a service provider, somebody who has that sort of the breadth of experience or options, and we're not kind of pigeonholed. So we got that out of the way. Now let's start talking about like where this whole industry is headed, in your opinion, what you've seen trending, where companies are moving, or are we still stuck in, you've got to see the white coat, lab coat, doctor thing, or like where do we see all this whole space headed?
Well, what's really cool is I'm seeing a lot of progress lately in like my world of health and medical professionals. They're going further than, like, there's athletic trainers that are going into physical therapy school and vice versa, and massage professionals are crossing over with
Oh,
their knowledge and their certifications. I know I've got my nose in a bunch of different things all the time, to just help stay on top of things because it's a good, well rounded approach. So, for other providers that are maybe just all massage therapists that they're providing, they're amongst those massage therapists, they're definitely, hopefully learning and developing professionally as well. And it could be different things. So I see in my industry and my end, people really diversifying their knowledge and not just going into um, a certain specific modality. And
mhm.
then you just end up getting a little stuck into protocol and in a box of, well, a low back, I'm supposed to do A, B, C, D. It just sometimes on our professional end, you end up feeling kind of tied because you can't do it. So the trend in the health and medical professions is diversifying.
Okay.
And there's still this huge gap in occupational health of early reporting and urgent care.
Hmm.
And I think so much of that is we're a great majority of workers and safety pros and whoever, it's kind of stuck in this. Well, if someone's complaining, they could be hurt or injured. So I've got to talk to a doctor or the white coat or the physician, right?
Yeah.
So they're like urgent care, it's got to be urgent care. And I just want to help everyone expand their minds when it comes to the soft tissue things. There's not much that urgent care can help with besides kick the can down the road,
Yeah.
uh, because they get stuck and then they're stuck in that usual rice protocol. Rest, ice, compression, elevation, here's some ice, here's some over the counter strength anti-inflammatory and an ace bandage,
Right.
which is like the biggest pet peeve and frustration
Right.
to go
And
through.
all of that, what you just said, even if that were an effective approach for every case, we can have a whole separate discussion about that. And actually, we did, um, when to use heat, when to use ice, if they're appropriate. But that was a previous episode. The thing you just laid out with over the counter strength, not prescription strength, or a dosage that exceeds OTC recommended dosage. But that's all first aid. That's all like non-recordable. If you look at OSHA, because now our conversation is going to get into, okay, that's all good and well, but there's workers' comp, so you have to be like there. So now that gets us into the licensing, the certification of state, medical licenses and certifications of who can actually bill workers' comp, and who does the company pay for this, or it gets weird, right? So
Right.
do you see that being a constraint on your industry, that we want to diversify? And so if you're a massage therapist and you want to go do some PT schooling and education, but you don't want to be a physical therapist because that's going to put you in that light. Can you hold multiple licenses? Do they conflict? Is there insurance issues? Like, what's driving, why do
It's a
people get pigeonholed into those things?
it's a big web. I mean, definitely, there are physical therapists who are also massage therapists, and to me, it just makes them a different type of physical therapist if they're in that post-injury world. So I guess the constraint, if you're asking, is there constraints? There's always going to be, because of workers' comp. There's always going to be a hard line
Mhm.
of pre-injury and post-injury. So what we're calling an injury is where I think just we need to expand a little bit. And a lot of times, so for my other providers and contractors, if they're coming from, physical therapy world, we have to have some conversations of words to use, not to use, right?
Right.
So pain and injury, let's not diagnose, just keep them in the wellness mentality of, if we're just dealing with a tissue injury, a soft tissue dilemma, I
Dilemma.
catch myself, right?
Yeah.
in this all the time. So someone, and that's why we use the words of grumpy and all the fun ones besides pain or injured.
Yeah.
But because we've got to stay in the first aid land and not the injury land.
Treatment land beyond first aid, right?
Yes. So it's semantics,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's what I see as the constraints, and just that it's you we can still be ourselves. I want my providers to feel like they're still themselves and want to really look at the whole body and see what's going on and not feel like they're in a box. But in the same sense, there is some lingo that OSHA likes you to use. So we just kind of it's kind of like learning to speak Spanglish.
Yeah. Yeah. And, OSHA has a list, and some say it's all inclusive. There are some gray areas, but there's a list of actual treatments that
Yes.
if you're doing these things, it's not first aid. And we've seen some changes in that list over the years. You're one, you use rock tape, right? You're always talking about rock tape, kinesiology tape in general, but like that used to be in the treatment category, or was considered or being considered.
Yeah, it was a medical treatment. Yeah, like I think 2015 is when it switched over.
It switched to first aid,
which is great because science ended up showing that it doesn't have to be super specific on how you put it on or all the things. You don't even have to be a health provider to put it on. So then that went into first aid. So that was a great change. The other, I don't know if it was necessarily a change, but a clarification in the massage therapy world, or if you're a physical therapist doing manual therapy, was ART, active release technique. They are their specific company. They have their specific protocol. But I mean, they do fantastic work, and they did a really great job with all their marketing, because all of a sudden everyone thought that, oh, well, do you do ART? And I was like, well, it's not called ART. That's called pin and stretch, is what we learn in manual therapy. And you're doing the same thing, but it's kind of like Kleenex and tissue.
Yeah.
Okay. And there needed to be a clarification. Like the American Physical Therapy Association had to like put out, like, there are people that can do that manual therapy technique, and you don't have to be an ART therapist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, but that's confusing to some people, right? So I've had the discussion back and forth. They're like, no, it's got to be ART. I'm like, doesn't, because it's a technique. It's tissue. It's not Kleenex.
Yeah. That makes sense. It was a branding thing. It was like you said, semantics. So, but you're bringing up a good point. If I'm a physical therapist, I'm a licensed professional, healthcare professional, right? Under OSHA's definition, and an employee has to seek, they say, medical treatment beyond first aid as a result of pain or discomfort. Doesn't matter. That could be a recordable injury under the record keeping standard. If that physical therapist, that licensed healthcare professional, performs certain things, if they say, no, you just need an ACE bandage, or you just need some ibuprofen. No, that's not an injury. And so that treatment goes back into the first aid category, even though a licensed healthcare professional did it. That doesn't
Correct.
make it recordable just because you go to the doctor. You went to the doctor. It's what they did or diagnosed that moves it into recordability or non-recordable. But that might explain why, like, we have a lot of, I wouldn't say over-reporting, because they report it accurately, but over-treating. Like,
yes.
You can end up with treatment that they didn't really need, but because they were a licensed healthcare professional, and I have to bill for this, I have to code it a certain way, I have to bill for workers' comp or insurance, or my license says, and my training and my profession says, this is how you deal with somebody who presents with this. And then boom, that's on the list that OSHA has for recordability, when there were probably other options. Let's talk about the licensure thing. Like, why aren't you a hold one specific license? And does that put restrictions on you that you maybe don't want to have?
It's a it's a big can of worms,
Yeah.
for one to open up, because and then again, it depends on this hard line
Yeah.
of, the injury and worker comp versus wellness and first aid. So for us, for Balance Biomechanics, I mean, on purpose, we stay in the wellness first aid land. However, when you go into licensing, and medical treatment, it's nice to have preferred providers that are in certain locations where, a company might have multiple locations across the country, right? And they need to have some sort of preferred provider in the area. I want to jump back. Chiropractic is one that, I've learned. Chiropractors can do manual therapy, massage therapy, which is a first aid tool. But for chiropractors, they, and a lot of colleagues and friends have had to get past the, well, I'm supposed to have a diagnosis for everything, right? And it's like, well, if you're doing telehealth or some sort of wellness, are you always diagnosing that? They're like, no, actually, if it's telehealth, we can't. And I'm like, same thing, So that's, where certain licenses, just by their, training or what they've been taught, they're like, well, I'm supposed to do this. And it's kind of like all of us are forming different, um, protocols based on our licenses. So I'm a massage therapist and I'm also a strength and conditioning specialist. So I do movement coaching and manual therapy, and both of that blends. It's been such a cool, mind opening experience to
Yeah.
do both. But if I'm licensed as a massage therapist, it puts me in a box. And they don't, some states and some places just don't like you to do both. So, for some, and then in the whole health and medical field, not only in massage therapy, but in chiropractic and others, people are finding that being licensed is actually putting you in a box. And this is not occupational health land. So even someone who's got a private clinic, they're a strength coach and they're a chiropractor and all these things, that they've found that they do private pay, they don't do insurance billing. The web of insurance is what really, tracks down a certain line, and that's why we stay, first aid and not medical treatment. But when you need the medical treatment, then it's super great to have all those options.
So
Then,
if you're working with somebody and it's like we've tried these other things and you're still experiencing like we may have to, in some cases may have to go to another level, that's where you have that network. So it's
correct.
making sense to me. I mean, especially with I have to have a diagnostic code because you sent them to me. I have to bill somebody and it's work related. Even if it ends up being first aid, it's still going to be workers' compensation that compensates me. They need a diagnostic code. So I have to
Well,
diagnose you with something that may or may not throw it into an OSHA recordable. And that's the thing that people need to understand. There is a difference between an OSHA recordable injury and a workers' comp claim. If I stub my toe and I go to urgent care and they said you stubbed your toe, they could take 5 x-rays. They can do all kinds of diagnostic tests and go, it's not broken, you stubbed your toe, it's a bruise, go back to work. You could have a hellacious workers' comp bill. It's not even recordable because
right.
they didn't find anything. So there's that whole thing. But
Well, and I think that, if I can interrupt you, I
yeah, go
think
ahead.
that then takes us, there's that language of reportable and recordable, right? So what we do with, our fit stop appointments or our early intervention appointments, that they're all wellness based, they end up being report only with the workers' comp. So, and, and then you can go into, well, there's some companies that are self-insured.
Yes.
And right. So then they have a little more freedom on that end. But so what we work hard to stay in is, it's wellness, it's first aid, and it ends up being a report only. You're still reporting it to the workers' comp, but it's not into a diagnosis and things like that.
Yeah, or you're generating a company report for record keeping purposes, internal, in case it does escalate. You've got evidence
Exactly.
of like we're aware of this, and okay. I mean, that makes
Exactly.
sense. So you see, are more younger PTs, we'll say PTs, not by license, but by like education, are not getting their license because they want that freedom, or do you see more? Do you see the industry going more in that direction, or what's your take on that?
I can't necessarily speak that they're not getting their license or not. They're just looking at not dealing with insurance payments. That
Okay.
private pay is really a great way to go if you are doing multiple modalities and you're taking a broader perspective on the body.
So what does that mean for companies? Like if you're a company and you're looking for early, intervention, you're looking for treating grumpy muscles, backs, shoulders, like not injuries, right? But look, let's give our workers some tools and teach the company how to prevent those things from happening, whether it's a warm up, people used to call it stretch and flex programs or whatever you want to call them. What does that mean for a company that says, okay, traditionally we always we wait till something we do things, but we wait till something happens and you go get treatment. Would this type of approach where it's private pay, this would then move it in away from comp cost and that kind of overhead on our ledger to part of our budget for injury prevention, our safety program, like
Exactly.
cost, PPE,
Exactly.
buying safety glasses, that's all over here. Um,
Yes.
is that where companies are moving this stuff to?
Exactly. It is
Ah,
away from your worker comp costs.
yeah.
They're budgeting it into their wellness budget or their, overall general safety budget for training or things like that. Yeah.
So
Totally separate
having
bucket.
somebody like you, um, having a contract, again, I'm not, it's not a commercial, but we're using you as an example. Your engagements with your clients, your companies, that's what that is. This is ongoing prevention, and it's under a safety budget, if you will, and not somebody's hurting.
Right.
Call Lori, and Lori sends a bill like it. That's
Right.
not, that's the old way, right? You're more of, you're engaged with
Correct.
them, you work with them along the way. You don't wait for something to happen. You do handle grumpy, sore muscles, obviously, but you're also this whole holistic approach to like total wellness, right?
Right. As are many other of
Yeah.
companies that do the same thing. That and I can't speak to all of them. I don't know their books, but I never bill workers comp.
Right.
I don't have any conversations with them. So that's all through the Safety Pro. If it does, there are, I would say, 10% maybe of our wellness cases, our fit stop cases, might go into the injury and then need medical treatment care.
Okay.
And so that then goes into whatever worker comp situation you have. One of squirrel off for just a second. One of a
Yes.
future, when I take over this podcast again, I thought about. I have a couple different people who are super fabulous in the worker comp insurance knowledge, way more than I am, and I'd love to bring these questions to them so
Yeah.
they can help explain how better ways of the specific, like how exactly is it lowering your X mod and
Right.
all your payments. So
Yes.
future, I
Take
think that
over
would be
episode. Anytime
yeah,
you want to take over, you've got
right.
free reign, Lori. That's the clout you bring. This is, by the way, number 7, the 7th time you've been
That's a lucky number.
lucky
That's
number
a lucky
7.
number.
You've
Yeah,
been on
so
our
I
podcast.
really I think that would be helpful, especially for all of the listeners that might be having those really detailed questions of exactly how are you recording this or reporting this. That's going to be helpful on that end because we've only worked on the prevention land.
Right.
So um,
That's
yeah,
interesting. So this whole concept, and I remember years ago working with, they were a massage therapist, and then they were a like an industrial ergonomist type of like sort of what you do, but it was years ago. But they were in a lane. They were in a very distinct lane, and then the other company was a massage therapist. They didn't work well together sometimes because they were two separate companies. Um, because one would say one thing and the other would say the other, and I saw what you were talking about. That's because this is what we do and this is how we do it. And they were like, well, this is what we do when we see this and how we have to do it. They didn't work well together. If they were on the same team and
Right.
collaborated, that would have been probably a smoother, a much better experience. But I remember being frustrated. They were like, well, we can't, if we do that, it's recordable. And I'm like, why?
Right.
Yeah. So they were really kind of stuck with, well, if it's what's needed, that's what's needed. But
Right.
so it's interesting that you say um, that when you talk about the whole workers' comp side, like there's a lot of things that we can do on the prevention side before it even gets to that point. Do you
Exactly.
see, so what you launched the Fit Stop and it's this virtual like visit, explain what that is and how that's kind of changed, and you have, I think you have an example of a recent engagement you had with somebody that you could talk about.
Yeah. It goes best when we kind of tell the story. And honestly, the Fit Stop and virtual telehealth appointments was one of the great things that came out of COVID, that people started being more comfortable having a virtual conversation about what's going on. But just to talk people through, and I'm sure this is very similar to how other companies would do this as well. But it's just kind of, again, how we think about it a little bit differently. So, like, I have a mechanical contractor, HVAC. They call and say, hey, I've got someone who's complaining that their knee is bothering them. I mentioned, can you do this Fit Stop appointment before we go and get it checked in urgent care? So this is always non-emergent things,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, right? So if it's emergent, you go emergency. You don't have time. It's the ones. It's really great for those employees who are like, no, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to get it checked. They're just like, I'm fine. Don't mess with it. Those are the ones that are so great to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's so many different conversations to have, especially since first aid training is changing and we're
Yeah.
finding different relief. The ice, the no ice is one of the huge ones. So, this gentleman has a really grumpy knee. He was on his knees, he was doing plumbing under a sink for 8 hours.
Oh,
I'm hoping he got up for lunch and for a bathroom break. But if you think about it, knee bent for 8 hours, there's certain muscles that aren't going to be happy. So he stands up, he feels a pop, and then his knees grumpy from then on out. That's another conversation to expand on down the road. What does feel a pop actually mean?
yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now. But so we talk and I help explain. So what are some people have like cool slides and pictures and the like anatomy software program, but what does Lori have? Well, I have the anatomy coloring book that I like to bring out, and I know if you're listening you can't always see this, but we kind of show the anatomy so that so this gentleman can understand, well, when your knee's bent all day, it's kind of like tying your wrist to your elbow. I'm sorry, your wrist to your shoulder all
Mm-hmm.
day. Do you think that once you straighten your arm out, is your bicep going to be really happy about that? Most likely not. So that's kind of the same as the hamstring was bent all day. So where do the hamstrings go? Where do they insert? So body education and a visual of, hey, this makes sense that it's muscle tissue. I know you feel a pop, but just standing up is likely not going to tear a ligament or fracture your bone or, all these things. So it's great to have a conversation of, yeah, likely this is muscle tissue. Your hamstring's really ticked. So you want it to relax. Please don't ice it. Icing is tensing everything up. It's restricting all circulation. Okay. I want everybody to remember circulation means better healing. Um, Inflammation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's delivering all the good stuff that heals the area. So here you have a hamstring muscle.
Mhm.
We don't have x-ray vision. We don't know if it's sprained or strained, but what do you do with a hamstring sprain going into urgent care? Oh, look, they're going to give you pills and ice and an
Yeah.
ace bandage and send you down into worker comp lane, when maybe we can just be like, hey, it's kind of grumpy. There's these really cool rolling tools. You can use a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, not at the point of pain, but far from the point of discomfort. Excuse me. Right.
Right.
The and one of our other, see, this is where, in my opinion, this is where thinking outside the box is really helpful, and learning all the cool tools. For those of you who can't see, there's a roller that's shaped kind of like a peanut. It's a little bit like a foam roller, but smaller. But what's super cool is that it actually has vibration in it also.
Okay.
Vibration helps with circulation. And what did we say? Circulation helps with healing. So this gentleman loved this roller. You can get these. We help get our clients get some. There's some safety pros that keep these in their office and they check them out to people. But he just loved the vibration of it, not the rolling. The rolling was a little intense on things, but the vibration really helped the circulation.
Circulation, right? Which circulation improves healing.
Improves healing. Okay,
I'm learning, Lori.
Right, we don't want to restrict that. So then we check up on the individual a couple days later, and how are you feeling? Well, it's still really sore, right? Of course, because it's a really grumpy muscle. So we keep coaching through, okay, which motions, which work motions are bugging you. Hey, have you thought about trying to do this instead? Or this is where the OSHA recordable or not recordable comes in, right? You want to stay on the line of just self modification for the worker, right? You're not telling them not to do their work, but we're helping coach them of, okay, well, instead of, reaching into the bin and doing sort of a deadlift that's using your hamstrings, is there another way that you can get that out of? They're still functional at work. A lot of what I love about skilled tradespeople and blue collar workers is they really want to get better. Yeah. They still want to go to work. So, and to a point of being stubborn, right? So we want to coach them through
to the point where they'll continue to work through pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we want to coach that through and be like, hey, I know that you're still trying to get this job done. And maybe they're like, well, yeah, tomorrow I'm supposed to do a job where I'm going to have to go up and down the 3 flights of stairs a million times. And that we can be like, hey, is there a different job? How can we navigate moving forward with that? Yeah. So that's a really great conversation to have virtually, because then they understand there are some cases, and some of our FitStop cases, that eventually just need, like, we'd really love to get some hands on you. Yeah. That massage therapy, manual therapy is actually a really great way to kick things faster. It's not always mandatory, but it definitely helps faster return to normal, so to speak. Yeah. And that's where preferred providers in the area that really think different and aren't pinned into a box of, okay, you're coming in for a knee, I got to work with the knee, but actually it's the hip. Right.
And that's another episode that we talked about, is sometimes it's not where the pain is, where the problem is.
Yes. Where you think it is, it isn't, regarding this.
Yes. Where you think it is, it isn't. Yes. Which is interesting. Okay. So the FitStop, when you started doing those, it was a way to get Lori and what you do and know to more people, and so that's going well. Do you see more companies subscribing to this way of, like, wow, injury prevention? Like, let's set up areas where we have some of these rollers and some of these, and let's get some training and coaching, because I know you do a lot of that, right? Yes. Like, you coach teams that go in. You do I don't know, I call it train to trainer or something like that.
It's something like that. I've learned that train the trainer is kind of what I called it initially, and
Yeah.
because that's the language that safety pros were using with me, and I've since learned kind of it's train the leader.
Leader. Yeah.
It's a train the leader that they get to lead the warm up and the mobility program. They don't get to then train someone
Train.
else to
Right.
lead it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the little thing. But yes, so my favorite question last one of client that I had that we do ergonomic training twice a year with this company, and I had a question, and I'm going to have to shout out. I have to shout out to Linda Tapp. She's
Yeah.
Safety Fundamentals. She's
Yes.
got really great training suggestions, and so I got it from her to ask a question like, if you had $1 million to spend on your ergonomic program, what would you spend it on? And it was a really cool back and forth. And of course, I'm like, well, I would make this whole room for you guys. And I would be like, yeah, recovery room with,
Yeah.
compression boots and rollers and massage tools. And, like this would be great to have.
Yeah.
But yes, more and more, it's kind of like the new Google, right? Or the
Right.
new Office sort of thing is to provide some sort of an area, or even if it's just the telehealth sessions, or if it's
Right.
something to where a worker can then DIY their aches and soreness. Like we're big on that. I really want the worker to feel empowered when things are small and they really just don't want to speak up. They're like, it's really not a huge deal, but it's something. Where can we help them start to solve, the dilemma?
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a good trend. I'm man, what, 27 years in now, at this point, and just seeing where we were, right? Even you in your industry, seeing where we were to like, and there's always going to be improvements, but it's much better now. We have more options as employers, right? Have more options today than we did many, many years ago. I do, though, wish that on the regulatory side, on the insurance side, on the licensing side, that, I mean, there's a reason why people complain about the wheels turning slowly. There's a reason why they should sometimes turn slowly. If you move too fast, bad things can happen, right?
Right.
But I think it's clear we have opportunities to really catch up to
Totally.
some of the stuff you're talking about, like with workers' comp and things like that. I think it's somewhat antiquated in areas, and it does limit, or at least seemingly limit, an employer's options of what they think they can do. I wish more employers knew about this whole side of the fence, of the prevention side. Right.
And more are. And
Yep.
more are kind of challenging on that insurance side. I mean, because there's the statistics and all the data has shown for a lot. Once someone goes in the worker comp system, it's just a horrid success rate on return to work, right? It's just not good to even get them in that system. But if you can have a little more flexibility on that system as far as providers go, and that your providers are starting to think differently and trying to get to the source quicker and, do those things, then it's great, because then they can jump back in and not even stay in that pond, so to speak, very long.
Yeah. Yeah. And then our previous episode that we talked about, we're well on our way to building this library of content, just us talking on the 7th episode in. But, we talked about that gap between soreness, and injury, and and reporting an injury. Like that's where employers need to play. Actually, before that, right? Just setting up work. We know what we know, and we're always learning. But if we're looking at jobs that have to be done, especially that are manual labor type of jobs, very physically demanding, there are things we can do before workers even start doing the job, that we could do better training. We could set up better equipment. We could change the layout. But to your point, especially in skilled trades, you got to weld inside a vessel, a horizontal vessel with 5 pipes, and you're not getting around somebody having to crawl over those and lay on their back and
Right.
well. So
Right.
it's really, then we shift our focus from, we've engineered out what we could.
Hmm.
We've done everything we could over here. Now we have to go to the worker and focus on the worker. Are they prepared for that? How are we preparing for them for that? Conditioning, it gets into our previous conversation about conditioning and all that good stuff. But I'm really excited about our industry, especially in safety. This newer, I should say, within the last 5 years or more, focus on like not constricting the work, not like saying we've got to put this stuff on you, right? Be
Right.
glad, like we got to, but kind of removing some of those constraints and saying like we want to increase mobility and movement and prepare you for work that's going to happen, because we're learning that it's okay to move and you're
Exactly.
going to twist sometimes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
It goes back to that, don't put them in a bubble and
right,
never move them, because that's going to end up biting you in the butt or the back or the neck, whatever
yeah, I mean
down
it's
the
this
line.
weird vicious circle of like, we don't want you to bend and twist, so we prevent you from bending and twisting, but then there's that time where you got to bend and twist, so when you do, you're not conditioned for it because we've stopped you from bending and twisting, and then you're still injured, or they go home, right, and they're doing stuff at
Right.
home.
And there's
um
no control over home. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm so passionate about, is that, don't be afraid to train them at work on how to move better, because then that will translate over into home and play and all the things. I had someone email me back that has gone through some of our training. They're like, I was out deer hunting and I was able to drag that buck through, a quarter mile of twigs because I
right,
was using my form, I was doing my stuff and then getting into the truck. I mean, I was so proud.
that's great. And I think we touched on that in our previous episode as well, of like, so I think we lamented um the fact that like, okay, we want to you got to be conditioned for the work, you got to be in shape, we're going to use air quotes there, uh, as just a general term, but we have to hire, we can't do pre-employment physicals, we're trying to hire as best we can. Well, then you do these programs where you're doing warm-ups and you're at the beginning, and then you do stretching at the end, and then you have little micro breaks throughout the shift. We can like, those are habits that we can build. Their body doesn't lose any of those benefits when they clock off,
Right.
right? And so there's this whole health type of approach. This is a very total worker health, if you want to use that phrase, approach. That's huge, and I believe we are sending workers home in that case better than when they arrived. They're better
Definitely.
for having worked here, and that's a
Well, and
that's a great experience.
what it ties back into is the recent coffee topic of having a regular check of your body and knowing exactly what's working and maybe what's not working, and doing these sorts of programs are how you figure that out.
All right. So yeah, you're talking about on the community site, the coffee topic. I try to do a coffee topic every day, and I roped you into doing, so you've done two now, coffee topics.
Twisted my arm
Yeah,
totally.
I did. I twisted your arm, but yeah, that's a great tip of like, that's another benefit of doing the warm-ups, is you're not just preparing your body for the work. You're also seeing, am I fit? Do I notice, oh wait, there's something going on with my shoulder. I'm aware of it. I can adjust, or I can talk to somebody, or I could go to that area that we've set up and
Yes.
do something, right? See how it all comes together? That's
It all
awesome.
comes together. I mean, because we don't want those people to sweep that under the rug, right?
Correct.
Because that's usually the pattern of, oh, well, ooh, that feels sore from my dancing skills over the weekend. So what do you want to do about it? Don't sweep it under the rug. Have a good culture, have an open conversation of, hey, we've got stuff for you that can help. Um, and I don't want to be too salesy, but one of the things that the FitStop has is a whole library of wellness videos that
Yeah.
people can search by body part. So the employee can go in themselves when they have a little neck thing going on and look up neck, and then wellness exercises. And
My
this is
my
something,
thumb.
yes, right? Your thumb.
You
And
remember that?
that, but that helps you then do your own research and be like, oh, yeah, I can do that myself. But even for other companies that are doing the same early intervention, if you're going to hire an early intervention company, one of the greatest things to help combine in that is a bank of wellness exercises. So our library of exercises means it's wellness exercise. And this is one that we can get into the detail when I have a conversation of people who know more about the recordables and the worker comp. But if you get too specific telling a worker, well, Joe, I need you to do 3 sets of 100 for this sort of a thing, then it becomes a recordable. So
Yeah.
if you have something that they can do their own research on, and it's what we coach everyone through, then you get in that little gray, nice area where it is still not
Yeah.
recordable.
I didn't mean to distract you. I'm looking. I had it. I think I took it downstairs. I had my rubber band ball. That's where I learned your trick with the
Oh, yes.
rubber bands and doing those
The finger
exercises.
extensions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went
I was
to the
just,
Fit Stop. I looked at the resources page and found your video, a couple of videos, because I was having this real. It was some pain on my, and I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from, and yeah, it's gone. I haven't had it since, and it turned out it wasn't an injury. It was
and you didn't need a doctor for that.
I did not. I did not. And yeah, it was just something. It was grumpy, and it was giving me some pain periodically, and I looked it up. It was a great resource. So yes, thumbs
I
up.
mean, people
Now I
can
can.
do that themselves on people can do that themselves on YouTube, but that gets
Yeah.
down way too many rabbit holes. It's super hard to even channel it. So
Yeah, so I like that you've got that resource in one spot there too, and you did that for obviously for your clients, right? To be able to go to that resource. Yeah, and I mean, this is all good stuff. I love it. I love this topic, and um, anything we can do on that prevention side, that's what we're all about, right? Even as a safety professional, how can we stop these things from happening? Injuries. Well,
yes,
stuff falls on people. There's equipment that bites you. There's we get that. We get this whole, guarding and engineering out and substituting things with that are less harmful, the hierarchy of controls. But we often don't, we often, I don't say neglect, but sometimes it's easy to forget. We also have to focus on people. We have to talk and look at people.
yes,
And how we work and what we're asking them to do at the end of the day. And there are real tangible things, benefits that we can get out of the warm-ups and the conditioning and the setting up areas for people, because it's going to happen that maybe they can just do a little recovery, right? And just to maintain themselves a little bit. And it's
exactly.
we've got to change the way we think about this, from injury to just soreness. Like there's a big
Yes.
difference between those two.
And I think so. I've heard the new buzzword around in safety land is, the psychosocial aspects of, safety. And so we like to, in our health and medical industry, say the biopsychosocial, whatever's happening with your body, what could be in your head that day. If you just had a recent family loss or,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things, social, that fits into all of this as well. And I like to challenge the fact of, you have machine guarding for a reason, but maybe someone's been working really hard to get more fit, more active. They're doing these warm-ups. They are more invested in their body, and they might think of their safety a little bit differently, to be like, I've worked hard. I don't want to mess that up and tweak my back after I'm feeling good right now. So
Right.
that's the whole glue that's going to bind this all together, is that once they get educated, they get invested and engaged, and then it helps safety as a whole. Kumbaya. Yeah.
And it's also contagious. You see your coworkers doing it and benefiting from it. That I love that aspect of it as well. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's hard to
No.
ignore a whole group of workers that are improving and enjoying their work and engaging in these activities, and not go, hey, what is that? What's that all about? Right. And go over and check it out. Awesome. Where can folks go to learn more about Lori? I know at this point it's like, come on, it's Lori, everybody.
Well,
How do you not know
no, thank
Lori?
you. Well, they got to know balancebio.com is the short version. The movementninja.com is another way to get there. They both go to the same place. The Movement Ninja is the social media channels. LinkedIn is where I put a lot of the free information and knowledge. And I just really want to help folks understand where we're coming from. So those are the best places to go. If you go to balancebio.com, there is a little button to find me and schedule to ask questions.
Yeah.
My text number, my
Let's
text
do it.
number is still out there. I love it when people just randomly text me. 720-704-4851 is a text number that goes right to my phone. It's a text app. So even at 3 a.m, you can text me. I'm not going to hear it until the morning.
I was going to say, be careful what you wish.
Right. But no, it's been super helpful. A lot of people just with a random question, they're like, wait a second, does it matter which direction I put on the tape? And I say, no.
No, there you go.
That's one of the easiest ways to get
That's
a question
good.
answered.
That's good stuff, though. And I know you've mentioned that before on a previous episode. Shocker,
Right.
the
Shocker.
texting thing. But yeah, it's great that you're able to provide that for people. So, Balance Biomechanical, the movementninja.com, both go to the same place. The resources tab, right?
Yeah.
Is key.
Yes.
That's where you'll find
Thank you.
resources.
The resources tab will get you to the Fit Stop access and all the things, and you can play
Cool.
around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody interested in the Fit Stop that Lori has available, check that out. Again, no affiliation. Lori doesn't pay for me to say that.
It's free. It's free anyway for
Thank you. I was getting to that part. It is a resource for you. I've used it. I can now give Lori a thumbs up without pain on that. 2 thumbs up. So yes, definitely check her out and follow her on social media, because I'm not kidding. The stuff that she puts on social media, I know LinkedIn for me mostly, but you share a lot of stuff on there anyway from other platforms. I like my personal favorite is the rental car ergonomics.
That's right.
So, yes. Car and Driver magazine will give you a ranking on vehicles and stuff, but you're not going to find this review of a vehicle that Lori does on all about the creature comfort, the whole,
yes.
Ergonomic aspect.
How it actually is to drive that car around, and rental car versions that aren't the luxury sort of thing, on which ones, if you get a choice of your rental car, then, maybe it might sway you in one way or the other.
Yeah. I think it's helpful. It's useful. So I do, before we go, gosh, for so many rabbit holes. I know. I love it. What rental car are you really itching to get into? Like anything in particular, or?
I don't know. It's not particular. I have found that I put in my videos now, Turo, that new rental car app where you're renting from private owners. That's my new favorite for my rental car ergonomics videos, because I can actually pick ahead of time. And I know that's the one I'm going to get. And I've been pleasantly surprised. It was what was it? The Subaru, the last Subaru. I can't remember it now. I have to go back to my videos.
Did you give it 5? I think you gave it 5.
I did. It was my first 5 out of 5 star.
Yeah.
So you'll have to go find that. I've had requests of, someone's like, get a truck, because they want to know more about trucks. So that's on the docket. And
Turo, you can rent, because it is from private owners. You can rent luxury sports cars.
That's
right. You can get real fancy with it. So
you can go fancy.
You can. All right. Thanks again, Lori, for joining us today. Everybody check out everything she does on those various resources. We'll have links in the show notes for all of those as well. Thanks again, Lori.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.